Well, hello again, everyone, and welcome back to Aquarius Rising Africa. And we have with us again today the gorgeous Jessie. We missed you. How are you, Jess?
Good. I missed you guys as well.
Yeah, lots.
Yeah, you're looking gorgeous, really are. So you've taken a little sabbatical. How are you feeling?
Yes, really good. More refreshed than when I started.
That's wonderful. That's very, very amazing. So we're happy to have you back. And of course, as always, we have a whole lot of goodies on our list of Jessie questions, or Jessie questions, call them that. And I think what I'd like to start with, you know, there's always these rituals and times and stuff that are the most powerful. And a lot of the holidays and things as well that take place, such as even Valentine's Day, Halloween, Easter, Christmas, stuff like that. I think there's always like, as we know by now, the Luciferians will always take everything good and really just turn it into something very nasty. And I think what's really great is for us to actually be aware of what's happening during these times. And I think now from the 16th of April, which is literally 2 days away, a day or two away, I think you said until the 24th of April, right? Is it Baal worship, Baal?
Yeah, Baal worship week. So yeah, that goes from the 16th through the 27th. And then the 24th will be the grand high climax for that time. So, and then after the Baal worship week, it will extend into May, and you'll have the worship of Ashtaroth and fertility. So that's the time where, you know, they'll kidnap a lot of girls during Baal worship week, and then they're impregnated and they'll be set aside for delivery in the fall. And those times can vary. They'll have some that they'll deliver premature babies for the fall equinox and in October. And then you'll have some that are set aside that will be almost full-term birth for rituals in December.
So I'm assuming we're talking about the girls that are in the breeding programs, right? I mean, we've spoken about that before. They've got a whole lot of girls that from the age of 10, they put into these breeding programs. So these are the girls that they'd be impregnating. Is that what you're saying?
Some. They'll use some of the girls from the underground programs. They also will do kidnappings. So, you know, there's one of the survivors who's in the Netherlands. She was one of those girls, and you know, they had I'm not sure of the full story, but they had taken her into the woods, impregnated her, and then later on they also took her again and induced labor in the woods and aborted the baby and used it for ritual sacrifice. So it can just be random girls that they get. So
I have two questions on that. That actually pops to mind. When you say they actually abort the baby and use it for ritual sacrifice, it brings to mind that a whole lot of these people, I think in America, definitely in New Zealand, this new ladyboy prime minister of theirs. Well, I think she's both. I'm sorry, New Zealand. But it's also brought out the law that they can abort babies at 9 months, which is a fully formed human being. So that brings to mind, I mean, would they be allowing this and doing this because they are using these full-term aborted babies for ritual sacrifice purposes? Is that what they're doing? Is that why they're bringing this into place?
I believe so. Yeah. there's been a huge connection with the medical centers and other facilities being involved. So I think that plays a part of it as well. They can do this out in the backwoods as much as they want, and the majority of people don't know all of their ritual spots. But I think some of them, they wanted to start bringing it into those medical facilities for easier cleanup and other things like that. There's also some complications with, medical centers that are built over ritual grounds. So I think that's part of it as well, as they want to be able to legally do these things and not to have anybody telling them that it's wrong or have to face any consequences for it. So, if they can get it done in a medical center and have it legal, then there's no consequence.
Wow. I mean, this is just one of these things, again, that for me, words completely elude me because it's just so hideous. Honestly, it's a fully formed child.
And when the mother when the mother goes there and does that, she unknowingly participates in the sacrifice to Baal or Moloch, or that for me is just like, without knowing it, you're not just doing that, you're actually giving your child this. That to me is very.
But I mean, surely, for me, the question remains: every woman that carries a child, and every man will know that that is a fully formed baby. So who would knowingly consent to aborting a baby at 9 months? That's my question here. So are these people that are aborting these children at such a late term, are they part of the system? Are they really that dumbed down that they have no knowledge that this is a fully... Who would abort their child at 9 months? That's the question I have, because surely that is common sense. Well, I don't know. What is your feeling on that, Jess?
I don't think it's willing. One of the situations that we came across, that they had, we'll just say they started the ritual at a nightclub. That nightclub, which also, was a restaurant, they had closed it down to, regular people. You had to get in through a password. But that nightclub was connected through tunnels to the hospital that was just, a block away. And they had blocked off all the lower department of the hospital that was connected to the morgue. And so it was in one of those back rooms where they had, 13 women that were pregnant. They were drugged. We'll just say they had like a paralyzing drug. So, these women couldn't try to escape. They couldn't get out. But these were women that, we'll just say Abrahamic, planned to use for spirit cooking that night, where they're consuming the mother and the infant together. So, they were using these buildings in conjunction, and, it was very obvious that these women were not willingly wanting to do this, but, being paralyzed, there's nothing else they could do. And they had them in that room with guarded men with weapons. And then in front of that, they had the spiritual guard, which were Sisters of Light. And so, individuals had to get past all of that to rescue those women and get them out of there. Then after those women were rescued, they were hunted, and so it was a constant moving of individuals so that, they couldn't be found or brought back into the system. Like once they're set aside for sacrifice or ritual use, the system will use them for that. So I think that that's what happens in a lot of these situations is that these women, or, a lot of times they're young girls, they're chosen, they're set apart for these rituals. They're chosen to, bear children. They didn't willingly become pregnant. Let's be honest about it. They were impregnated during a ritual ceremony, probably raped by multiple men, on top of whoever knows, what demonic spirits were involved in that. And then, then they've got 6 to 9 months and, the trauma is redone. Some of them, are reused. So, this is their life. Every year this happens to them. And, if you look back through some of the older, we'll just say psychiatric records for the psychiatric systems or hospitals that were connected to the Catholic churches or the states, like the state foster homes and things like that, you will see that there are women who testified that they had many children, and nobody would believe them. They would say, oh no, she's crazy. She's never had a baby ever. But I believe a lot of those stories were, these women who were, we'll just say, repeat victims. And for whatever reason, the system would continue to use them as breeders for babies that would be ritually sacrificed.
So what you're saying is a lot of these women are not even aware that they are part of the system. They get impregnated through some form of rape or abuse or something, and then they get tracked and then they get monitored until the baby's at a certain or a gestation period, and then this kind of thing happens to them. Either the baby then gets removed or they get spirit cooked, if that makes sense. That is just horrendous. Wow. My question was going to be to you, one of the questions is, even the women in the breeding programs, though, who actually impregnates them? I mean, are they artificially inseminated by certain sperms from certain donors? Or are they actually horrendously raped and abused? Is that how they actually get impregnated? Or as you say, maybe raped and tortured in some kind of a ritual, like, I don't know, the 12-year-old ceremonies or whatever that is, How do they all get impregnated?
Yeah, it is different based on the area or the situation. Some of them, they do have individuals who are there that, if it's let me just maybe speak to, the breeder program that I saw in Chicago. They had, priests that they would cycle through. These Catholic or Jesuit priests would come from different areas around the United States. And I think that from a young age that those priests were chosen to do the job they put them in because of their genetic, we'll just say because of their gene makeup. And, many of them were underlying hidden Nazis. So, they would cycle these priests through. Basically, they were pedophile priests, and they would, do rituals where they were, raping multiple girls. And that would be full rituals. Another time I witnessed things, and Cheryl Beck has spoken about some of these things on some of her testimony. But some of it would happen in the Masonic lodges where, you would have multiple men raping a child. So those were some of the situations that I saw. And, I do believe that those people are chosen ahead of time. Some of the, other ones occur in the woods. And so those were ones, where it would be children that were abducted, and then some of those kids would be released. They would allow them to be found. They would abduct them again. It'd be kids from even some of them, their own towns. So, some of the stories I've heard includes government officials from a town area, and they will kidnap the kids at night, and, nobody's aware. The girls get pregnant, and then they will, abort the babies before they even show signs of pregnancy. So those are some of the situations. And because of the horror and the trauma, the victims are silenced. They don't want to speak out. They're afraid that, these top officials or law enforcement in their town will harm their families if they speak out.
Wow.
Because they would be threatened, no doubt, and have to be silent. Wow. So this is really what I'd like to just to reiterate to our viewers and our audience as well. So this is now happening really from the 16th of April all the way through until, is it the 1st of May, so we've got to really be particularly vigilant with your own children, any child in the vicinity. If you see anything suspicious, be aware that this is now also a prime time for kidnappings to occur, right?
Right. Well, for them to do can happen even at schools. So be aware that, there's games that they play that to children seem innocent. They'll call them like May games, but I can remember things, where they would have ribbons or colored, it was kind of like a colored parachute when I was a kid, and, everybody would stand in a circle, and you would throw that parachute up in the air, and you'd have to run under it and get out before it completely fell all the way down. But what they would do is they would play this game, and, like if the parachute touched you, you were out. Eventually there's a winner to that game, and they'll make sure that winner is a girl. And usually that girl then will be one of the chosen ones that they will choose to impregnate. So, ask your children what activities they're doing if their school is having classes. Ask them, what games they're playing. Ask them to describe those games. Ask the name of the winners of those games. What classmates won. Know that information, and, just be watchful, be alert. So.
How crazy playing games like that. And obviously, I don't know, what next? I mean, to actually do that, it's like, wow. I actually have something that has just popped into my mind as you're speaking. I'm currently interviewing one of our overcomers, who is a lady from Australia and has been through some pretty excruciating experiences herself as a child. One of the things that she has told me was that a family member would take her to, again, these rituals, and she also had to sit in the front. And again, she speaks about the posture. You're not allowed to move, you're not allowed to blink. Basically, you particularly have to watch. And then she spoke about this little girl that she recalls being about 4 years old. And she recalls her to be particularly beautiful with white ringlets, blonde ringlets in her hair. And she was then tied up to some type of a pole thing, if I remember correctly. But what she says was this little girl really looked at her with so much love, just like stared at her straight in the eye. And just, it's like she wasn't scared or anything. She just looked at her with so much love. And it was like she felt bad for them sitting there having to watch this. But what she says was that they raped her. There was a number of men that raped this little child. And then they literally surgically removed her skin, to put it in a nice way. But what she's saying was that it looked as though she was drugged, but throughout this process, she didn't scream, she didn't cry, she wasn't trying to get away. It was just like she was completely complacent and accepting that was where she was at. What is that? Is she drugged? Is she hypnotized? Is she bewitched? What makes the children and I've heard this before though, that sometimes often these kids are just there, you know. What makes them so complacent that they're not screaming and shouting and performing as one would expect a child in a normal circumstance to do in those circumstances? What can you tell us about that, Jess?
My sense of that is complete brokenness and shock. And with those two things combined, they just want out, they're ready to die. And they gladly accept that death because they know that they'll be out.
That actually makes a lot of sense. It's like, yeah, it's like that I think when I've heard before some people speak that even when murderers on death row and they're about to go to the gas chamber or whatever it is, they reach that complete, often, maybe not all of them, I'm not sure, but they would reach that complete place of acceptance and just at peace with what the situation is. They've let go. Makes sense. So, yeah, wow. Gosh, what humans are capable of doing to each other is quite phenomenal, right? Okay, well, guys and girls, so this is Baal Worship Week. And sorry, what's the other one? Is it just Baal? Or is it...
goes hand in hand with him. So she follows up with stuff, so.
Okay. Watch your kids, watch everyone's kids. Just be aware of what's going on this week until all the way through till the 1st of May. Okay, well, I think I wanted to ask you, I've been reading a lot about and hearing a lot about the 3 popes, the white pope, the gray pope, and the black pope. So from what I understand, the white pope, which would be the current pope of the Catholic Church, which I think right now is Pope Francis, or supposed to be Pope Francis, okay, he's really the baby of the popes, okay, doesn't really have that much power, but just is put out there to be seen as the one with the power. And then we have the great pope, who I'm researching or reading about, and there's a guy called Pepe Orson, and then the black pope called Arturo Sosa. So can you tell us what this is? What is the white pope? I can start with the white pope, the gray pope, and the black pope, because I'm hearing these are the most powerful guys on the planet. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. But in your experience, what do you know about these guys?
Well, again, you have in there, I'm trying to think how to put this. The Vatican itself is kind of its own entity, and you have, kind of 2 governing forces all at one time. So, we've talked about the dark side of the system, the light side of the system. So really, they represent different factions. The white pope is going to be over more of the Masonic orders and the individuals who would be considered part of that light side of the system, where the black pope is going to be over the Masonic and Jesuit orders that are considered the dark side of the system. So, do they really do anything themselves? They're comparable to kind of a high priest level, so they're not even really that high in the system, but they're meant to be face fronts. So, they're kind of this neutral, they're not high priests that are put over a specific quadrant. So, their sole job is kind of to be that interface for the white magic and the black magic, or the gray magic, between the Vatican and, all of their churches or departments or lodges that are around the world. So, they're going to be dealing more with communications. They're going to be making a good public face, for the audience that they're supposed to interact with. So for the light side of the system, he's the public face with the general public, so he wants to deceive people. He wants to have that form of godliness. He wants that worship. He's going to rule or make, laws or decrees that, the majority of Christian Catholics who, really are trying to serve the Lord, they're thinking, that he is this godly man. While the dark pope's going to be working behind the scenes more with the satanic, the Kabbalah groups, those who are in the high level esoterical black magic masonry. He's going to be interacting more with, the high illustrious supreme leaders of the Masonic lodges. So they each kind of have their role. They don't really have any power or governing authority, but if there's problems in the system, they're kind of like auditors. They're going to go around, evaluate magic levels. If they want to escalate somebody, they're going to promote that person. If they want to remove somebody, they're going to push for the removal of somebody. So yeah, I call them face fronts because they're just they're there, but there's really no power or authority structure behind them. Really the power and authority lies in other places. With both, the real power structure behind them is going to lie with the Holy See, which is the financial department of the Vatican, or the governing body of the Vatican. They're a select part of the council. I'll just call them what they are. They're a select part of the World Governing Council. They're one of the special committees, but let's be honest, who are they? We'll call them satanic councilmen, so.
So they're not really as powerful as what they've been given credit for in the media. Is that right?
Yeah, they're really not as powerful as the media gives them credence for. We've kind of named the 4 individuals that are of power and authority right now that we need to be watching and keeping our eyes out for. And that would be the Pindar, the priest, the prophet, and the real we'll call him the real Pope, not those ones. So
the Phoenix.
Phoenix.
Yes.
Would that be the one with the real power? And I think we actually named his name being Obama, right?
Yeah. And you have to remember, it's not for all four of those, they're of equal power. So they work collectively together. It's not that one is more powerful than the other. They all hold that power place together.
So where would these guys, the white pope, the gray pope, and the black pope, sit in that system of the Phoenix, the Pindar, the priest, and the prophet? Where do they fit in there, or are they just intermingled? So there's nothing really special about their positions as far as that's concerned.
They're going to be kind of we'll just say intimately involved with those four individuals, because they're kind of the face front that is going to bring in the one world religion. So whatever those individuals behind the scene, the four P's, are deciding, those decisions are going to come through those face front people. So we may see things being decreed or declared through those individuals, and they're going to work hand in hand to really just elevate the work that those four P's are doing. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it does make sense. I mean, I just wonder why these guys are given so much power. I really do. I mean, it's interesting to me, that when you hear certain people speak about them, and I don't hear people speak about them that much, but these are the guys that are the ones in the power, kind of thing. I'm interested because I know we spoke about Obama having the highest seat, right, in the Order of the Phoenix, if I'm not mistaken. He took over from George Soros, right? So he's very close to Oprah Winfrey. Where would she be sitting in that equation? And I ask again because she obviously, she's got strong ties. She had strong ties to Nelson Mandela with her school year in Africa. She's got a lot of strong ties to Africa. And so does Obama, actually. I mean, it's supposedly that he was born in Kenya. But there again, was he or wasn't he? Who knows? There was also a big question mark around his place of birth. Do you know where he was born, actually, Jessie? Obama, was he born in Kenya? Was he born in Africa?
I can't confirm any. I'm not sure exactly where he was born, but I've heard heard the evidence about the different places. So I believe most believe he was not born in the United States, but
yeah. I've seen pictures of him supposedly visiting his humble beginnings in Kenya, but who knows? we know that none of that BS is true anyway. So it's all just a show. That's funny.
Yes.
Anyway, what is Oprah's position with Obama? Why is she and him so hand in hand? I'd be interested to know. So to me, that's got to say she's also quite intermingled, or quite interlinked rather, with the Order of the Phoenix then, if she's so close to him.
Yeah, she's one of the high priestesses for the Western quadrants. So with that, I've talked about how all of them have to declare their humanitarian efforts. So Oprah had worked hand in hand with Soros with a lot of his humanitarian efforts. So, I don't know if you want to say like her part of her responsibility was overseeing some of those humanitarian efforts. So when the position changed hands, her job did not change. Her job was still to oversee those humanitarian efforts for whichever individual, was sitting in the Phoenix position. So she's just continued to do that.
Okay. Makes sense. Now, please clarify to me, what is Jesuitism? I'm sorry if that makes me sound a little bit dumb. I'm sure a lot of people know what it is. Sorry?
I just say, that Jesuit religion.
The Jesuit, what is that? I don't even know what it is.
In the Catholic Church, you have, we've talked about how this order likes to hide their different departments or, groups. So, I'm trying to think of the easiest way to describe it, but, we've talked about in Masonry, you have the first 3 levels, which are, considered low levels. And that's kind of it'd be like your basic education. You get your base education, and then you can specialize in however many orders you want to specialize in. Okay. And when these people, like, as you take on more orders, you're no longer going to call yourself a Mason. And these specialties, they would not say are Masonic branches. They'll say that, oh no, we're not Masons. We're not affiliated, recognized by Masonry. We're this special order. So that's how, they get their special training. And then people think that there's all these, basically humanitarian secret societies, special orders. So the Jesuits kind of fall into that. All of it is connected through the Catholic Church's, the Masonic departments. The Jesuits fall in between both, but they're going to focus more, instead of some of those specialty branches of the Masonic departments, what you have now are the specialty branches of what we call the light and the dark side of the Catholic Church. So some of these Jesuits really, their experience, their special training is going to kind of be just like mine was with chaplain school. When I went through seminary, I was trained in the different ministries of the church, so you learn how to, preach, we just call it like you'd learn the different sacraments, how you're going to give those, how you relate to your parishioners. And, you'd focus on the things that you're going to do in your career that minister to the Lord. So a branch of that Jesuit that is going to focus on those things. But when you get to the dark side, some of that dark side is going to interconnect with some of the Black magic Masonry. And so the Black Jesuits, and we're not talking color of skin here, they're going to be more like special op. I want to call it, and I know I'm going to get crucified for this, but it would be comparable, some of it, to the ancient orders of jihad. Okay, you've got those who were in charge of guarding the sacred things of the church. Okay, but these people not only guard the sacred things of the church, they're guarding the sacred things of the Brotherhood or the Illuminati system. So they're going to work hand in hand with the archaeologists, bringing in sacred artifacts, things that they can use as talisman, you know, and you can watch, like they will rotate these so-called sacred things. You know, they'll make stories to make those sacred things connected to Mary, or things that the Pope has clarified, you know, as sainthood type things, things that are connected to, you know, those who have been deemed saints. So they're going to guard the relics, and rotate those. They're going to provide the protection. You know, they all have different positions. Some of them are going to go out into different areas, you know, and do more of like the ancient jihad, where they, you know, were not only guardians and protectors, but they also were soldiers or fighters for the Vatican. So, you know, they would be in charge of the Vatican's army and leading the holy wars. So, you know, that's probably the easiest way I can describe it. It is like its own, you know, army, its own educational system. It all still falls under, you know, the different parts of the monarch programming. The program that they are actually trained in is called the Carousel program. So, you know, it's not per se like MK Ultra or Delta Epsilon or Beta Kitty. The Carousel program is probably one of the older original programs, and that one goes all the way back to, I believe it was the 16th century, where you had the Knights Templars going into Islam and Muslim areas, and you know, fighting in the holy wars and things like that. So,
wow.
What do they do in the carousel programs? I mean, I know that there's obviously a lot of mind control involved. What do they do in the carousel programs then? What do they do?
It's very similar, only, you know, instead of going to, like with some of the monarch control programs, your training center is going to be at a military base. With these programs, your training centers are going to be, you know, the underground areas at abbeys or Catholic churches, the Franciscan, and I'm not saying all Franciscan branches are part of the system, but some of those older Catholic churches and we'll just say educational Catholic churches and buildings or orphanages, that's where that programming is going to happen.
Okay. Cool. Gosh, I'm learning new things every day. I love it. Never too old to learn, right?
Yes.
Right. Amen.
Amen to that.
Yes.
Okay, and sorry, Angel.
Now I say thank goodness. If we have to learn, if we're gonna stop learning, then I'm gonna get bored, you know. So yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank
Wow.
goodness.
Okay, then I've recently heard as well, speaking about the Vatican, because I'm sure again the Vatican is guilty, yeah? Guilty as charged, all three the popes. And who else goes along with that? There's been about 770, or I'm not sure if it's 770 or 777 Bible books that have been actually kept out of the original Bible. So in other words, like missing books in the Bible. What do you say about that? And why have they been hidden from us?
You know, for the most part, a lot of those books were hidden, and many of them go back to Solomon himself. So some of them have been released through the you know, the Solomon magic or the different types of psalm magic. Those are some of those, but they only allow the higher esoterical individuals to use those books. So they're very guarded. And then you've got, you know, the even more interesting books. I'm probably not going to get into them today, but, you know, at the heart of it, the books, you know, are based on magic, or some of them are historical documents. But the thing that they lack is none of them speak to, you know, the power of our Lord Jesus Christ. So that is why, you know, the Council of Nicaea did not include those books in the actual Bible. You know, that group, I do believe at the core, were men that, you know, were following the Lord. And, you know, every book that we have in our Bibles was chosen because, whether it's Old Testament or New Testament, it speaks to things or alludes to the true Messiah and the prophecies about him. So those are kind of the interconnections with those books. You know, but so what we have, though, is what the system has hidden from us is not the truth of the gospel or the truth of salvation. You know, God has not allowed them to do that. What has been hidden from us is, you know, books that contain things about the spiritual realm, you know, that we do have power, that we do have authority, that there is a spirit realm, that there are, you know, spirit beings, angels, demons. You know, these beings do interact with us. Some of the other things would be, you know, things that would bring healing to our bodies physically or spiritually. Those things have been hidden, and they guard and they keep those things for their own use, and, you know, refuse to allow the general public to use those things. You know, a lot of times they will cycle these books through what I call the Satanic Library. So you have a lot of these older Catholic churches or monasteries where they have underground libraries built into them. And that's where they keep copies of these books. And, you know, think about, you know, what was one of the jobs of the scribes of the Catholic churches. You know, they weren't just copying the books of the Bible over and over. They were copying some of these other forbidden books, and they would store them in the different churches and monasteries. You know, I believe that Notre Dame was one of those places where there is a library underground. You know, that's the Cathedral of Luxembourg. And also, you know, we have to remember one of the main communication places that Somerset Belanoff and the World Governing Council uses as a back channel communication line. You know, the Vatican, yes, the Vatican also has that library. There's some monasteries in Russia that also have those underground libraries. Those are actually guarded by those who claim to be of the Orthodox Church, though. So, you know, when the church split, that was part of the way that they kept some of those books hidden. They gave half to the Orthodox Church and half was kept in the Catholic Jesuit Church. So it gets interesting.
I would say it would get interesting. I would love to maybe in the future, if you're open to it, go through maybe more in depth of what that is and what you could share with us on that. Are you open to that?
Yeah, we can discuss that. We can talk about what we can share and talk about.
Yeah, I'd love to actually delve more into that. I think that could be very interesting. especially in these changing times, you know. I think I'd love to know, I mean, it might have been because from what we're hearing, really just the selfish purposes that they didn't want humans to be empowered, which is why they kept a lot of the stuff back. So I would love to get
a lot
more.
Of the books and knowledge came from, you know, the book of Enoch talks about how the fallen angels came down and gave wisdom to men. So that's how, you know, a lot of the Solomon magic and other stuff like that, it, you know, at the height of that, you're attaining this connection or relationship to the spirit being. And the contract you make is, you know, you give them use of your body, your property, your physical authority and power. And in exchange, they give you this heavenly knowledge. You know, where did those spirits get that knowledge from? Scripture tells us that there's a library up in heaven, that the Lord has books that, you know, are up there where he's written every single day of each of our lives, you know. So really it comes out of that heavenly library in, you know, we'll just call it in the thrones or courts of God. And these angels were giving away that knowledge, whether God wanted them to or not.
You talk about the throne room. You've spoken about the throne room quite a bit. So you've obviously been to God's throne room, because I know that you have a lot of communion with God. What's it like there? What's it like in the throne room?
Throne room is interesting. You know, the best way I can describe it is like, you know, if I were standing straight, you know, like looking at the throne of God, you've got the throne that's in the middle. And then to the right side, you have this massive slab of gray stone. And that's the altar. And, you know, that's where, as we fast or we bring things to the Lord that we surrender to him, we lay those things upon the altar. On that altar, there's also the golden bowl of prayers. And those, you know, they're burning nonstop every day, kind of like incense. And so literally how I experience it is that, you know, if I'm near that area and that incense of prayers is surrounding me, I can hear all those individual prayers rising up before the Lord continuously. So it's very interesting. On the left-hand side, you have another altar. It's kind of like I would say like a large garden, raised garden bed, but it's filled with coals. And that's the altar of coals that Isaiah the prophet spoke of in Isaiah 6. And he says that, you know, an angel took one of the coals from that altar and touched it to his unclean lips. The floor itself, you know, I see a lot of fire in the throne room. That's how I see the glory of the Lord, is as this fire. So there's different aspects of the fire. The floor looks like puzzle pieces that I've tried to talk a little bit about the angelic language, the flames of tongues of fire, but that's kind of what it looks like. It looks like these, like if you were to draw different shapes of fire and make it into a puzzle piece, that's kind of what the floor looks like to me. As you're looking at each piece, they will randomly throughout the entire throne room spurt fire up. And as the fire spurts up, it speaks, and all of them speak praises to the Lord. So, you know, some of them will cry out, "Holy, holy is the Lord." Others would cry out, worthy is the Lamb. So you'd hear all these constant voices while you're up there praising the Lord. And yeah, so it's a very interesting is not the right word for it. But when you're there, there's just such a beautiful peace is not even the right word either. It's almost like you're breathless, like you are just so amazed at the beauty, and you're listening to this beautiful orchestrated song, and you feel the presence of the Lord, though, interacting with everything that he's made. And there's such unity, such oneness, and it's very humbling. At the same time, it's very, like, you just feel like this excited passion, like you want to join in with the song and you don't ever want to leave. Yeah, I don't know how else to describe it.
Beautiful.
That's the place where I go to argue between the Lord and Satan. When I wrestle, sometimes it's just me and the Lord wrestling up there, but other times, Satan's there too. And, he'll be bringing his petitions and requests, and I'll be bringing mine. And, scripture talks about that he walks, he was one who walked in the firestones of the Lord. So if we think about that, we've got that altar of coals. And I think that was, he was in that presence, that very place, that throne room was his main stationed area. And he's still allowed there. He's not happy now, but we're going, I'll just say he's not happy now.
Yeah, because I think he's losing some of his grip and his power, right? It certainly seems that way right now. Mm-hmm.
Yes, he is.
That's very cool. Wow, that's lovely. Thank you. That's quite a concise description, and I think I can get a lovely picture, clear picture of what you see there. But speaking of angels and fallen angels, and actually, you know what I discovered while I was moving? I have a book on the entire book of Enoch, which I would actually love to read. So that's on my bedside cabinet for my future readings. So I would love to actually see what that's about. So the fallen angels, talking about the fallen angels, our fallen angels, the term to me, fallen angels, seems like a negative term. So are all fallen angels negative? Are they working just in this dodgy, no wing, kind of crawling around in the dark energy? Or are there some amazing fallen angels too?
Well, I love that you bring up that word energy. And, as we were talking about the throne room, we have to remember that the Lord was at a quantum level entangled with everything that he made. Everything that he made comes out of, or was formed out of a breath that he spoke. Okay, so you've got this very intimate relationship between God and his creation. What happened with Satan and the fallen angels was that, pride welled up in Satan's heart, and he said, I am going to be God. And so when he took hold of those desires that were evil, he literally entangled himself with something that was not of God. He separated himself at every level from God. And so, at that point, the Lord gave a decision for all of the angelic beings. Did they want to stay in that connected relationship with the Lord, or were they going to choose to walk away? And those that were cast down, those that were fallen, all chose to completely separate and walk away. Their decision was not, they knew when they made that decision, there was no redemption, there was no returning. They literally were choosing to entangle themselves with the knowledge of evil. And it does go back to that tree of the knowledge of good and the knowledge of evil. So they knew everything that was good, that was the Lord. They were aware mentally of the evil, but we got to go back to, what does that word knowledge mean? Does it just mean that they had a knowing of good and they had a knowing of evil? No, it's much more than that. They chose, that knowing means that they chose to actually entangle or experience or participate in that evil. So with that in mind, why did God cast them out of heaven? Because they were actively choosing to participate in evil and wickedness. And he was not going to allow that in his heavenly courts. So, if we look at it that way, we have to pose that question: can there be anything good when they are actively choosing to participate in evil and wickedness? I think it pretty much defines itself that there can be no good in that. So even though some of them call themselves good, or they have a form, do they know what godliness is? They do. They experienced that. So can they replicate that form of godliness? They can. Can they use that to draw people into a relationship or a connection with them? They can. But I always go back to that, that core question: can there be anything good when they're actively participating in evil and wickedness? And we're to test the spirits, with the angels, do they come and interact with us here on earth? They do. Their heart and their core will always be to lead us to that goodness in relationship with God. They always have that surrendered heart to serving the Lord. They will always only want to lift him up and draw you closer to him. It's not about drawing you closer in relationship to them. Their goal will always be to minister to that relationship between you and the Lord Jesus Christ. Anything else, you can always tell, they will seek that glory, they'll seek that honor, they'll seek worship from you, they'll seek to elevate you in yourself, that, you're seeking self-glory and self-worship. So this is how we distinguish some of these, whether it's the angel that really fears the Lord and walks in the light, or whether it's one of these fallen angels.
Wow. Interesting. Very interesting.
That was a great
Which
question.
then also, I think it's something that's definitely been mulling through my mind a lot, in terms of these things, and it's wonderful and I loved your answer as well. So which brings me to the next question I have. When you talk about people who are demonically possessed, I mean, I know that when we look at a lot of the people that are in the Luciferian cult and stuff like that, we can say they willingly hand their bodies and their minds and their lives literally over to the demons. But, when we look at how so many of them actually, like literally from as young as 3 years old, are pretty much forced into the system, is there really a conscious choice around that? But then we look at the people who are demonically possessed and a psychopath. Now, I mean, we're talking psychopaths that are like really these mass murderers or these serial killers, or just someone who has really absolutely no conscience and can just do the most terrible things to someone else. Would you say that a psychopath is generally someone who has been demonically possessed, or is there a difference in your opinion?
I believe there can be a difference. A good example, I think, is a Pharaoh in scripture. You know, what we see happening in that situation is that Pharaoh was making decisions. You know, he did perform mass genocide of people, you know, kept a lot of people in horrific bondage. So, you know, ideally we could say he is the example of a psychopathic person. And what does scripture tell us about him? You know, it says that his heart was so hardened, and in that, you know, every thought of his heart was towards evil. He didn't have any thoughts of good towards people in his country, and especially not towards the Israelites. And so you can have these situations where people's hearts are hardened. They don't want to listen or to do what's good. And the Lord sent the prophet Moses to argue with Pharaoh, you know, to give him chances to turn his heart away, to do what was good. And in each situation, he chose not to. And scripture tells us that the Lord continued, you know, and I love this because it's a very challenging thought for people. But scripture literally puts we'll just say the blame, you know, on the Lord, that he was the responsible party that continued to harden Pharaoh's heart to the point where there was no turning back for Pharaoh. There was no way he could choose good. There came that point where, you know, his heart was so hardened that it ended up, you know, leading to his demise ultimately. So the Lord led him to that place. You know, so I think that would be the classic example of somebody that we would consider a psychopath. You have individuals that choose evil. They choose not to walk in the light or to walk in anything that's good. And that is different. In that situation, not once does Moses ever say that there's a demon connected to Pharaoh. You know, he never rebukes or binds or casts out any demonic spirits. So, you know, I believe that it can happen at a human level, that not all evil, you know, or we should say not all, you know, behind every evil or wickedness, there isn't always a devil or a demon. That we in our human natures have that capacity and that ability to choose evil and wickedness and to walk in that in our own carnal flesh. You know, so I do believe there's a difference. At the same point, you know, scripture also tells us that our battle is not against flesh and blood, so not just against the human fleshly nature, but that behind that, our battle is against principalities, powers, and authorities, and rulers, and spiritual forces in the heavenly places. So you have to ask, you know, what's drawing that person's heart into evil? You know, maybe they're not directly possessed by a spirit, but, you know, is there a ruler or authority or principality in that area that is tempting or drawing that person into sin? You know, God called Cain out on that. You know, he said, evil is standing at the door waiting to consume you, you know, And that was before he killed Abel. So the Lord knew that he was being tempted to murder. Yeah, so I guess I'll just end there, but it gets into a very, that also is a very interesting question. And that's one, in our world, I deal with a lot in my chaplaincy, especially working with psychiatrists and in the mental health, that was my specialty, working in mental health. And, they go to the extreme where they want to put everything in the physical. They don't want to deal with any of the spiritual possibilities or aspects. And God forbid you should say there's a demon with that person. Even if they see that demon manifest, they just see it as an odd anomaly. It's like, well, define for me, what in the hell is an anomaly? I mean, that looked like another being to me. It's like, how are you going to explain that? I was like, my goodness,
Okay, so yeah, I hear you. There's certain people that, and I guess in certain situations that they just don't want to be seeing beyond that, and recognizing that really all it will take is a bit of an exorcism and some holy water or some anointing oil, but they can't go there.
And that's true. There is a cure, for both. There is a cure. For the one, it is, anointing oil, prayer, fasting, rebuking those demonic spirits. For the other, the cure is confession and repentance. And think about that. We're not just talking, that somebody's going to have this serious mental problem that they're dealing with forever. Or that they go around bouts with. Literally, there is healing, there is a cure. That scripture tells us if we confess our sins, the Lord is faithful to forgive us. And if we confess that desire for evil and wickedness, and we repent of that and turn away from it, the Lord is going to honor that. So I have seen people healed completely. I've worked with mass murderers. I've worked with, one of them was the VA bomber. I led him to the Lord, so I've seen people turn away and have that healing and have a productive quality of life afterwards, where they don't turn back to those desires or those things.
Yeah. I do believe that's incredibly possible, really. I believe that. I was actually watching, I don't know if you've watched any of his stuff, a guy called Ronald Bernard, is an ex-elite banker from Holland. And when he spoke about his childhood and how he was abused by his father, his parents were both pretty badly damaged in the Second World War. So I would imagine some of them might even be in MK Ultra, probably the father, whatever. But how then, when he couldn't hurt the mom anymore, how he then started beating up on him, the little boy who was the firstborn, because he realized that was the one thing the mom could actually love. And through that, he goes to a child, obviously I think it must have been some kind of a children's program, because he was very much beating up on other kids and obviously bullying and hurting. So he was sent to some kind of child's, I guess, some kind of a, what do you call these things when these kids go, not an orphanage, gosh.
Yeah, it's like a teens or troubled children.
Yeah. But he had some very hectic experiences there, raped, abused, tortured, so really built up this absolute hatred for humanity, and once he came out there, he went into everything dodgy, then himself started diddling with kids, became this absolute criminal, and became this elite banker, and really had no conscience, in a nutshell. But when he was pulled into the system, well, I mean, obviously, I believe he was already pulled into the system, but when it came to him having to do child sacrifice, that was his wake-up call. Mm-hmm. And that was his point of turnaround. So I do believe no matter what people have been through, I don't believe he murdered anyone. But they used to sit and laugh about people taking their own lives, you know, when they would crash markets and have them lose homes, and, you know, it was like funny for them. But he said something very interesting there, you know, and it made me also just think about it in a different way, where he speaks about, because of the pain and suffering that I guess most of these people have been through, they really hate nature. They really hate anything good. They want to destroy anything good. It's like this destructive force that sets in. But the minute they, you know, people like him will get a wake-up call, and it's that instant turnaround thing where you realize you are born of the light, you are born from God, you are a human being, and human beings are created from love, you know. So I think it's beautiful that there are certain people who are waking up from that and actually telling their stories, which I must say I found his story very touching. I think it was quite an amazing. Have you heard him, Jess? Have you listened to him?
Yeah, I believe so. And I think I'll have to look and see. I think that's the one we did a little short video on. I love when he's, if I'm thinking of the right gentleman, I love when he tells about how he came to the Lord, and those moments when he realized the depths of evil that he was involved in. And that's what we captured in that short, was just, you know, I just love, I don't know how to describe it, but when he talks about that, just that broken, humble surrender to the truth. And, you know, that's what I want people to see, that, you know, these individuals who walk in this deep darkness, that, you know, there is hope. You know, the majority of them don't want to be walking in the depths of that wickedness and evil. And, you know, you can really see that in his heart. And, you know, that's kind of where my heart cry is for these people, that, you know, that we would come alongside of them. And, you know, it doesn't mean that we give them free rein in society, but it means that, you know, we genuinely meet them where they're at. We build them up. You know, we realize that all of us are human, and all of us could have made those choices, but that each life is valuable to God. And, you know, the Lord doesn't desire any to perish. And, you know, as I've brought out, 95% of these people don't want to be in there. And even with his story, you can see how from a very young age, the enemy started working to build, you know, that forced desire to do wickedness, and people get trapped in that. They don't know a way out. But he's one of those people, you know, he shares that story of how he got out, how he got away from it, you know.
Amazing.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'll see if I can find that video short and send that to you. But I know it's on our YouTube channel. Yeah, it's on our YouTube channel, Light to Dark. So
lovely. I would love to see that. And I think, well, that's actually a beautiful note for us to bid each other farewell for this week.
Wow.
I have lots more for you for next week.
That's good.
So thank you, Jessie, as always, for your time and your wisdom and your knowledge, and just, sharing with us. And you're looking beautiful. So maybe you'd like to just end for us in prayer as you usually do. Thank you.
Let's do that. Heavenly Father, I just thank you so much for this time together. And I thank you for the great discussions that we have. And Lord, we just pray over our audience today, Lord, and ask that you would be with each one as they're struggling, as they're wrestling, as they're facing trials and tribulations this week. I ask that you would give them that hope, that assurance that they're not alone, that you are with them, and that you, your desire is for them to have good and beauty and truth and hope in their lives. Father, I ask that, I know it can be so hard going through suffering sometimes, but I ask for each one that they would realize that in place of those things, you will give them a gift. You will give beauty, truth, or goodness, or hope. So I ask that you would help us to press on, help us to look forward to those things. And I ask that you would help us to speak into the lives of those who are suffering around us, that we would not forget the basic gift to humanity, that we were made to love each other, and there's just no words for the thoughts that are in my mind, Lord, but that each of us are meant to be a gift to one another and to add beauty to each other's lives. So I thank you for that and pray that each person this week may experience many beautiful gifts from other people coming into their lives this week. We ask for this in your name, Jesus. Amen.
Amen. Beautiful.
Thank you. That was lovely. Beautiful. Thank you, Jess.
Thank you, Jess.
Yes.
And as always, have a beautiful week. Take good care of yourself. We'll see you next week.
God bless.
All right.
God bless you. Okay, guys, thank you so much for watching another episode of Aquarius Rising Africa. And wow, quite a bit of awesome information we received there this evening, hey?
Yeah, it was an emotional roller coaster. For me, at least, I was like, what? Oh, sure. But amazing.
Yeah.
Lots.
Yeah. Wow. Anyway, so guys and gals, thank you so much. God bless you all. Mwah. Take good care of yourselves, and we'll see you on the flip side. And if you haven't given us a like, a share, and a subscribe yet on Aquarius Rising Africa, please do so. Find us on Facebook, find us on Twitter, find us on BitChute, find us on Telegram. Yeah, as well as Luminate Africa. Yeah, you see, I'm getting it. Luminate Africa on Telegram, which is the anointing circle. So we're doing anointing all over, and in your part of the world. So yeah, just join us. There's a great group of people that we're connecting with there as well. You don't have to be from Africa. It's just cool to have you. So yeah, have a wonderful week. Take good care of yourselves, and God bless you all. Cheers. Bye, Angel.
Cheers.
See
Ciao,
you.
Angel. Ciao, everybody.
Got it. Well, hello again, everybody. Good morning. Welcome to you from Aquarius Rising Africa. Beautiful to see you all today again. And I have back with me the lovely Amanda Bass. How are you? You've been away for a while.
Yeah, I have. Going very well, thanks, Chantel. Busy, but it's good. It's also a very busy season now. So yeah, I've written a whole thing up on this time from equinox until equinox until about the 6th of May. It's just one solid weeks of very dark things going down.
I'd love to maybe touch on that with you. If not now, maybe we can just, I'd love to, we've done previous, decodes and stuff like that as well, but I think it's really important just to be able to touch on the different dates.
Yes.
What they mean, what they doing during those times. And absolutely, we know that a lot of these nasties are particularly active around this time as well. So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so your survivors are really, you know, the wheels are coming off and they're all crying for help. And so, you know, the therapists need to know that it's, you know, it's time to give a little bit more attention and be available during this time and season.
When you say that the wheels are falling off for some of the survivors or a lot of the survivors, can you explain that?
Well, they're being accessed to go to rituals.
Okay.
So
their parts are being activated, these the splits.
Yeah. You see, it's if you look at the turning of you know, the orbits and the year and everything, then you must know last year this time there was stuff. So every year of their life, they have been summoned for the different high days, which is your solstices, your equinoxes, you know, your Easter, the Christmas, all of those high days. They are like downloaded memories for them, because every time when as the cycle comes around and the date comes around, they get summoned, and the parts that are trained to be at those rituals are then, you know, they have to be there. They have to, because they fulfill a very important role. And so especially your royals, they have to, because it's global. And, you know, the world is on its head globally. You know, there's such confusion, and there's talk of Third World War and all of these things. So there's just so much going on. And so the cult is very, very active. New World Order, very active. And they are also desperate, because as more counselors are working with survivors and getting them out, they are losing those that they have thought are their pillars, and they are losing them. And so they're becoming quite desperate. So
when you say losing them, what is happening? Is it because more and more survivors are speaking up and speaking out, and therefore that that foundation of destructiveness, if you want to call it that, are being shattered and becoming shaky at this point? Is that what is currently happening?
Yeah, because you see, the more secrets, the stronger the hold and the control. And so what is happening is, now that survivors are starting to hear other survivors' testimonies, and there are more programs going on and exposing and revealing this, and more people are getting to know about it, it means that we are weakening the secrecy base. And when you weaken the secrecy base, things are in the light.
Yes.
And so that means the frequency is changing, you know, from the darkness and the secrets and the power to the light. And we are also then connecting with those parts that have been in darkness all this time and working for the cult. And then when we access them, we can actually tell them they've been tricked, they've been lied to, and they're serving a loser. And nobody likes to be lied to. Nobody wants to be lied to. So they get pretty angry. And then you say, okay, but now you've got a choice. You know, you don't have to stay stuck and serving and going to rituals. You don't have to go to rituals. You have a choice.
When you say they get summoned to go to rituals, is this on a physical level that they actually can project themselves and take themselves there? Or is it more on a spiritual level where they would maybe be projectiled out of their bodies type thing, and maybe take over another body?
That's possible. It all depends on the calling and the ranking. It all depends on, you know, what is their iniquity force, and do they have access to clones? Because they make a clone within 24 hours. And so as a therapist, you need to be very careful, because they clone us. They just need our DNA. You know, they just need DNA, and then they clone you within 24 hours is a clone of you. And then what happens is this clone pitches up or a Nephilim that is a lookalike pitches up at the ritual, and now you're the therapist, and now you're at the ritual, and so they're very shocked, and then they stop therapy, and then when you ask them what's going on, they say, but you're also cult active, you're at the rituals, and then it's all this game they play of deception, and so you have to be, very careful to every day pray and destroy whatever clones they're making of you.
Yeah.
Huh? Destroy.
Because there are so many flying around at the moment, aren't there?
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely. So, it's very common now, so, I mean, technology, sorcery technology has just exploded. So, yeah.
And most of us are still blissfully unaware of it, right?
Yeah, yeah. So depending on your ranking, you could be summoned that a part of you, your spirit goes. So you go and you go in the spirit and you still attend whatever you have to attend. Others are there physically in their bodies, and they come back with bruises on their bodies, and they don't know where they got the bruises from.
So they don't have memory of being to these places in the middle of the night or doing certain things. It's kind of like a complete switch in persona, and then it's like that part of you goes walkabout when the rest of you is unaware of that.
Yeah. But you see, when they do the summoning, they've programmed them very well. It won't just be one part. It's a relay. It's like a relay. There's one that wakes up. So there would be some sort of a sound. So they could give some beep on the phone. There could be something that triggers that part. They wake up, and then there's another part that starts dressing and knows what to wear. And then there's another part that opens a door. And there's another part that goes and stands outside and gets picked up. And then when they get to the ritual, then the part that has to do the ritual comes forward. And when they're done and the part has got to come back home, they will stun them with stun guns, some sort of a shock, and blank slate them so that they won't know a thing. They can't remember a thing. And so you are not dealing just with one part that goes, you are dealing with the whole relay and a relay back until you get into bed. So they're pretty clever. They're pretty clever. They know how to hide things.
This is insane.
Yeah.
How would one know what would be signs for someone who is programmed and controlled like that, that they can notice whether they are being programmed or not, and being sent out to some other event which you are blissfully unaware of?
Yeah, they will wake up tired. They'll have bruises over their bodies, They can have very sore limbs, depending whether they broke their bones and they do magical healing. Things like that. They're going to see clothes in their cupboard that they don't know where it's coming from. It's just the part that lives life, the presenter who's living everyday life, doesn't have a clue, and they're not supposed to know. And they only create the presenter at age 3. So up until age 3, they've already put in all the parts they want, because they've already done a lot of splitting from the womb. And then at age 3, they will create a presenter, but there's not just one presenter either. There are 7 presenters. And normally one is the one you can work with, but the others are still cult active. And so your presenter part is at a different place in the brain as well. It's in the survival brain. So where the other programming is at the back of the brain, you've got the presenter parts get placed into the survival brain, which means It is the strongest of the whole system. So, you know, all of this stuff has come forward since we started to learn about the brain and know how the brain works and how they would do scans, brain scans. And I'm going to be showing you a couple of that in our presentation today. So that, you know, now that we've got this knowledge, we're able to actually, you know, we can now understand a lot more. And so if you're working with survival brain is what keeps your blood pressure going. It keeps your breathing going. It keeps you alive. Without survival brain, you'll be dead. And so survival brain is very, very strong because that's your deepest part of your humanity. And so they put the presenter parts, 7 presenter parts that they put in there. And they are the strongest of the system. And the old, you know, when we used to do the therapy, we would think there's just one presenter. That's all. But we never realized there's actually 7. And so we would get trapped and tricked and, you know.
But why 7 in particular?
I can't tell you. We've tested it over and over and over, and every time we get 7.
Okay.
So, 7 is a number of completion. It's a cycle. Yeah. So it could be a copycat of the biblical number 7. You know, that we know God says he created the world in 7 days and 7 years and, you know, all the cycles of 7. It can be that's a part of a copy. You know, they copy everything because they can't create. They're not creators.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Wow, incredible. But let's get on with what you were going to present us with bonding as well, which I think is very, very interesting to talk about that.
Yeah.
A lot of it would be trauma bonding, I would imagine.
All right. So I can now do share screen.
Okay, hang on. Sorry, I think I need to just give it to you.
There we go. Thank you. All right. So let's play. So, Chantel, as just those people that want to download, all of this stuff is available on our website and it's for free downloads. And so anybody is welcome to climb on and take what they would like to look at. So I'm just calling this DID SRA training and foundations. So I want to talk about bonding. And what I'm doing today is, again, just laying foundations. So, and so this applies to not only SRA DID people, also normal, you know, normal trauma, normal inner healing or pain in your life. So this could also apply because it's principles. So I just feel that we need to, you know, put in the principles. Now, what is very important about bonding is God has made us, created us to bond. We've been created to bond with a mommy, which is the deepest bond that you have with a human being. And it's the first bond because it's in the womb already through the umbilical cord. But of course, with the survivors, the younger generation, they get put into artificial wombs and they get put into a pod. And then they get basically controlled very, very closely by scientists that know exactly what to put in at what stage of development. So they're very clever. But the whole thing about bonding is God created us to bond with our mothers. But what they want to do is they want to break the bonding with SRA DID. And even in our lives where we didn't have good relationships with our mom and we didn't bond with our mothers, we would, as babies, be screaming. And it is colic, you know, they call it colic, but it's lack of bonding. We just didn't bond and we don't feel safe. And so what is interesting about this is we went and looked at what they call Paleo Hebrew and to look for the word mother. And the Paleo Hebrew is pictures. So it's like hieroglyphics of Egyptian writing, but this is Hebrew. And so we see the word for mother I do a whole teaching where I speak on the mother bonding and how we are to bond with our mothers. So I'm not going to go into that detail. It is available. It's part of the Journey to Freedom series, and it's book 3, where I specifically, book 2, I focus on the bond with a father, and book 3 is the focus on the bond with a mother. And I speak about, what is the role of mom in your life? And where there's no mom, we're going to have problems. So the word where is mother. So the Palo drawings that you see there is the word in Palo Hebrew for mother. And so where is mother? If we add this to the word mother, in other words, where is mother? Mother is now, she's drugged, or she's just not emotionally available. She's too busy with her own stuff. And so if we say, where is mother? We are going to get this word paleo, which then, Hebrew, you read from right to left. And so it's that ox, which is the head mum. And then where is mother? When we put this together in Paleo Hebrew, we get the word fear. So where there's no mommy in our lives, whether you DID-SRA or just a person growing up in this broken world with broken parents, and now your mom is broken. Your mom has had lots of issues. She can't give her heart to you. She can't soothe you. She can't bond with you because her own heart is stone. She's turned her heart into stone. We get the word fear. And so the word picture says, where there is no mothering, there is fear. And I think this says it all. So the cult and Satan, your mama's enemy, he works on fear. That's what he works on. And totally. So he loves this. This is foundational. So for every DID-SRA, they make sure there's no bonding with the mother. So they would then put the baby into implant the child into a mother's womb that's not even the mother. That's what they used to do in the olden days. But now they've got even the high-tech stuff. So they put them into a pod and they breed them. But the whole thing is there must not be bonding, because if there's bonding, there's love, there's acceptance, and there's safety. But then he can't work. Then he can't program the child. But the minute the mother steps out of the picture and she's not there, she's not safe either, there's fear. And that's how they work on the frequency of fear. And so they don't want a mother in the picture. So even for a normal person that just has a bad childhood, just parents that are messed up, you're going to have fear as well. And because of the fear, there's going to be stuff coming into your life because you don't have that bonding and safety. So as we previously discussed in the whole thing that I do with mothering and mother bonding is the first few years of bonding with mom and dad are foundational. And so even the first 18 months of your life, that is when the cycle of joy, I think we spoke about it the last time I mentioned it to you, but joy is what is our strength. And it's the first 18 months of your life where the synapses of the pathway of joy should be completed in your life. And if it's not there, you open for fear. You open for all negative frequencies and all the negative emotions. Every emotion is a frequency. And so you're going to be open for fear and insecurities and just no assurance, and all of that opens you up. And that's how the enemy can then send in all sorts of stuff into your life. And that will determine whether you will be an addict one day. Because if you didn't have the joy and the love and the acceptance within the first 3 years of your life, what happens is now you're open And you are now going to have addictive heart energy. And that addictive heart energy can be drugs, it can be sex, it can be food, anything that I'm addicted to, that I want, just to fill up this need, this hole inside of me. So we then create addictive heart energy. And I start attracting all sorts of stuff to try and fulfill this emptiness that's inside of me. And so the lack of bonding in our lives, or abusive trauma bonds, and that means that if you had a perpetrator for a mother, or just a mother messed up, and 1 minute she's like this and the next minute she's like that, that means you're going to form a trauma bond, because you've got a bond. Doesn't matter which way you look at it, you've got a bond. And God made us to bond. We were not created to be on our own and not bond. So if we don't bond, it means that I'm going to bond to something, and that makes a trauma bond. Even to my perpetrator, I'll go back for another hit. I'll go back for another rape. I'll go back, but I've got a bond. And that's why, we can't understand, why does a woman keep on going back to her abuser? Her husband keeps on beating her. We get her away. We get her settled in a new place. We put furniture, curtains, everything. We create a lovely place for her. And within a week or two, we hear she's back with her husband. And we're saying, what's wrong with this woman? Why does she keep on going back to abuse? It's because of the trauma bond. And so it's so important to understand bonding. This is foundational, whether you've just had a bad childhood or whether it's the extreme of SRA. We need to bond. But are you bonded in a healthy way, or are you bonded in a trauma bond? And you keep on going back for more and more punishment. And so if I have lack of bonding or trauma bonded, I'm going to have gaps in my development stages. And the cult have studied development stages to the T. They know exactly at what age the brain is now ready for the next download. And so it's so important that if you're working in this field, you must understand bonding, you must understand trauma bonding. And then you've got to understand this whole thing about, now I've got gaps. And the stages of development is the next part that I want to speak about, because this is foundational stuff. I must know, what have they done to that child at the different development stages? And so you are going to need to address these areas in terms of inner healing for your normal person. And of course, you're going to have to deal with trapped emotions, because that's now been trapped in the body. So you're going to find what happened in the past, Chantel, being in this counseling ministry for more than 40 years. I've seen a lot. I've been through a lot of courses. I've myself worked in this area for many, many years. I've trained myself, trained other counselors as well. And what we have found is that if we worked with a spirit, because the spirit gets wounded, and we deal with a spiritual aspect of the person. We've dealt with a soul, which is the mind, will, emotions. And we've dealt with inner healing when it comes to the soul. But what we did was we pushed the body away. We pushed the body to the back. And we kind of like neglected the role of the body. But what we've learned, as more and more science has come forward and given us more and more understanding, we have learned that body, soul, and spirit are equal. They are equal.
Yes.
And in value. And so as the spirit man can give me information, the soul man can give me information, but so my body. So when we are not knowing what we're dealing with, when we don't know what has happened to this person, let's say there was trauma in the womb and they didn't have words, so that they can't verbalize the emotions. All they are saying, I have raw emotions. I am panicking. I have anxiety. I have, I can't sleep. And so they're describing to you raw emotions, but they don't have a story to tell you what happened.
Yeah.
So what we then do is we work with Neshama, as we spoke about last time. We've learned about Neshama, and we can start to explore around Neshama. But what we also do is we say, body, show us what happened. And then the body goes into a body memory. And that is where you start seeing marks. If they were held down in rape, or fingers around the neck. So you start actually seeing the body manifesting body memories of the trauma. And the body cannot lie. That's the most important thing to remember. The body cannot lie. There's a guy called Bessel van der Kolk who has written a book called The Body Keeps Score. Brilliant book. And that shows you that when the body starts to speak, the body cannot lie, because the body has recorded everything that has happened to you. And it is stored. It's stored in the subconscious mind when it's pre-verbal. It's stored. The body has stored it in body memories. And that is why when there's a heart transplant or a kidney transplant, I think we've spoken about it, then you actually get the person getting the memories that goes with the organ.
Yes,
so,
absolutely.
Whatever they were doing when they were dying, I mean, there's a lot of stuff on YouTube that you can look at to understand body memories. All right, so we see that trauma bonds are used in DID-SRA. And so this is really important, that you need to work through trauma bonds. Maybe, Chantel, as we go, we can talk, we can do a session on trauma bonds, which is foundation for the cult, for DID-SRA. And for any person that is trauma bonded, you don't have to be SRA, but you can be trauma bonded. And then you keep on going back to your abuse and your abuser, and you don't know why. And so that would help you to understand as well. Okay, so this is one of the books that I did, the teachings I did. It's called Journey to Freedom, Book 8. And I think it's like the cherry on the top of all of my teachings that I've done in all the years. And this is the development stages of the brain. I just love this because, I studied science. And so I love it when science starts catching up with what the Bible's trying to teach us all these years. And so I just love it to have the confirmation of how God created us as human beings. And so if you are interested in looking at the whole teaching that I did in Journey to Freedom, Book 8, I really want to recommend that. You need to understand the brain and the development stages and how the whole brain starts to function. And so I want to look at attachment styles, and that is to do with the bonding. It's how we attach. So when this tiny little baby and mommy's whole, okay, this is now a mommy that is sorted out all her nonsense from the past, and she's been healed, and so she's her emotions are stable. She's mature enough to handle baby when baby cries all night and she's not sleeping. So she's not going to freak out, and she's going to get help. She's got maturity to understand how to work with baby and not hurt baby, and not project your own trauma onto baby. And so we call this synchronized, and that is where mommy and baby are synchronized. They are at the same frequency. So when mommy holds baby, or mommy's feeding baby on the breast or a bottle, that she looks into baby's eyes, and they are emotionally on the same page. They are synchronized. And when mommy looks at baby, there is a download that happens from mommy's eye into baby's eye. There is a download, but it's not words. It is emotional download. It's from the right side of the brain through the left eye into baby's left eye, downloaded onto baby's right side of the brain. There's emotional data that gets downloaded onto baby. Now, if you think of your mom and you think, in what state was mom when you were born? Was she stable? Or was she young, immature, didn't know what she was doing, full of fear, maybe drugging, maybe drinking, whatever, maybe being raped, maybe being a prostitute, but whatever she was, she could not, with her brokenness, synchronize with you as a baby. It's not possible. And so there would be a very negative download that's happening to baby from mommy. And it's data, but it's emotional data.
Yeah.
That gets downloaded without words. Now, this is very interesting. They were doing tests at a university. And this professor was busy developing this understanding about the baby and mommy. And he saw that there's a download happening, but he didn't know what to call it. They were still studying this. So he then asked mommies, he put it out there and he said, listen, I'm busy with research, and any parent, if, mommy and child, if there's something strange going on with a child, please, could you come? I want to do tests and I want to see what I can learn. So this mommy arrives and she's got a little girl that walks with her legs like pigeon toe.
Yeah.
Yeah, and she's walking and her legs, her knees are straight. So she's not bending her knees like a normal walk. So she's walking with very straight legs and, very hips going and just rolling and just very uncomfortable. And she'd taken her to every doctor, every physio, every medical specialist that she could find to try and sort out this child walking at 14 months like this. Strange. So the doctor looked at this and he studied her and heard her story, and he said, but tell me, what happened to you as a child? Can you tell me your story? And she said, okay, I've got quite an interesting story. When I was a child, I was born with club feet. And so they put, those what do you call them? Not stilts. When you bandage up a child's leg and to try and get them, to
yeah.
walk. So they put like wooden things, what they supported the child with. And so she would walk with her legs straight and she would walk like this. But there was a reason. She was born with club feet and they had medically worked on her. So they had to, do operation and break the foot and set the foot, reset her feet, and then have her on these supports. So then he said, okay, now I've got the answer. He said, because you then downloaded an emotional memory to your child. So he said, I'm gonna test this and see if it works. So he picks up the little one, 14 months old, on his lap. He looks at the child in the eyes, because the eyes are the windows of your soul, of your spirit. And he speaks to the child's spirit. And a 14-month-old child doesn't have the mental understanding. He speaks to the spirit of the child and he says, please listen to me. You have no reason to walk like you are walking. That is mommy's memory. That's not your memory. Mommy had club feet as a child, and mommy had to have operations, but it's not your problem. You don't have that problem. You can walk normally. And the little one looked at him, and it's like, you don't know, has she heard what is going on? And she just hopped off his lap and she started walking normally. And that whole thing was over. It was finished. And so this is so amazing that you can just see that mommy downloads. And you need to know what gets downloaded to the child before words. Then we see this attachment style should, if they are synchronized, baby will be healthy. But if we call it a light, like an attachment light, if the attachment light is always on, mommy, 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 the child becomes a needy child because mommy's not giving the attention, mommy's not synchronized. Now the child is wanting attention all the time, 24/7, will cry and scream and kick and throw tantrums. And then you think, what a naughty child. No, mommy's messed up. Mommy isn't bonding. So baby has got the attachment light on all the time. I want attention, mommy. And it drives you crazy. I mean, you've seen kids like that, Chantal.
Absolutely.
That explains a lot.
Amazing. Explains everything.
The next attachment style is where the lights are off. So this is the extreme would be an autism, a child of autism. In other words, in their own little world, not connecting at all. Not connecting. That's your third attachment style. So that's where mommy ignores the child and baby ignores mommy. It's off. There's no connection. And the last one is disorganized or chaotic. Now, this is the one that the cult loves. So they love to work on this. So let's just see what this is. I'm just going to look at the fourth one. And this style is scared of unpredictability and scary reactions of turning the attachment light on. So they don't know, do I turn it on? Is mom going to hug me? Or is she going to throw me? What is mom going to do with me? And this is disorganized and chaotic. So the 1 minute mommy's, oh, I love you. And the next minute, just get away from me. I'm sorry you were born. So you've got, you see what they're doing? They're creating polar opposites. They're creating, this is DID. This is the beginning of DID. And so you can have a child, a mommy that is disorganized and got chaotic ways of attaching. And the baby is now set up for DID. Yeah. So we see baby begins to register the approach of mom as scary. So mommy comes down the passage. Baby wakes up from a sleep, a nap. Mommy and baby goes into fear. Because I don't know, well, what mommy, is she going to be okay or is she going to be scary? And since he cannot know or guess, baby becomes disorganized as well. So this is set up for DID-SRA. And they do it as small as possible. So that's why they need the babies, because of the development stage. They know that we need healthy bonds and a healthy mommy to bond and to be synchronized together, to sing a symphony together. So when baby rests, mommy leaves baby to rest. When baby's awake, mommy is awake and playing with baby. But this disorganized is horrific. It is so scary. And then what we then also see is mommy has many issues. She's got anger issues. She's fearful. She's depressed. And so these are mommy's issues that she then projects and downloads onto baby, and baby becomes chaotic. And so due to her own pain and wounds, mommy herself is up and down, chaotic, disorganized, and does the same to the child. Absolutely. And so the baby tries to attach, but attaching is so unpredictable. And so what do? You just take your heartstrings, because God gave us heartstrings to attach. Now I take my heartstrings and I just pull them in and I knot them, and I don't bond with anyone. And I become an unhealthy adult. I can't give my heart. I can't
And
bond.
that's when narcissism will set in. That's the
Exactly. Yeah, you're right. And so we can illustrate what psychology terms the primal split. Now, I'm just running through this. We did it last week. Baby's happy and joyful, but then trauma, mommy comes in and she's now in another state. And so mommy is angry. Baby gets a big shock and mommy is scary too. And then mommy is mean. And so I've got to now try and make sense. And basically, baby gets put into a cage, emotional cage of negative frequencies.
Yeah.
That's what happens with a child emotionally. And so even if you grow up and that's not been healed, and that development stage has never been revisited and healed, what happens is you grow up and you can't even love your husband, your wife, your children, the loved ones. You can't give yourself because you don't trust. You just don't trust. Yeah. And so, again, what I'm just running through this, we did this last week where we spoke about there's a good mommy and a bad mommy, and then baby comes and creates the good baby and the bad baby. And so that's what we call the primal split, and that's what they love to work on. So it's chaotic bonding. Okay, so now we see attachment is so unpredictable. And in trying to make sense of mommy's ups and downs, dividedness is introduced into the mind of the baby. So this is for normal people. You can be DID or extreme, which is what SRA want, but they've got to put these foundations in place. And so it could be a complete split, DID, SRA, depending on the degree of severity or for how long this was repeated. And then why is this and other bonding issues important to address? Why am I doing this with you, Chantel? And the reason is unhealthy bonding issues from my childhood mean I can't properly relate to God as my father. I don't trust him. And I don't know if he's going to really be there for me. So I have father issues. And then I can't fully bond with my spouse. And I can't relate or bond to others in the community. Even my children don't know me. They just see an angry me. They don't know me. They don't know the real me because I'm a caged. The real me is caged. And so it's so sad. So the bonding relationships are the basis to my pain, hurt, and faulty perceptions. And if denied or left undealt with, I will not mature and walk in the fullness the Father has for me. And so my marriage is going to be a mess. You know, as I shared with you, I think I was about emotionally 5 years old and Rolly about 7 when we got married, because, I mean, here we are full-blown adults, but emotionally we're like kids. And so I throw my tantrums and I throw my toys out the cot and you know, if he doesn't say he loves me every day, you know, all nonsense like that. So I'm an adult, but I'm acting like a child, and I mess up my marriage. I mess up my relationships, and it's all because of what happened in my childhood. And so I will remain arrested in my development. I'm going to be stuck as a 5-year-old, stuck as a 3-year-old, whatever the trauma is, when it happened in my life, I'm going to be stuck in cycles of pain and addictive behaviors. And even generationally, these things can be downloaded onto my life as well through my mother, that from her right side, emotional side of her brain, through her left eye, into my left eye and onto my right brain. And that gives me the foundation of my emotions. Yeah. So my first emotions are my mom's download. So I have to find out, hey, this that I'm feeling now, this fear, this panic, this insecurity, is it mine or is it my mother's? And so I've got to release it, even if it's generationally, it's still a trapped emotion that has to be released. It's a negative frequency. Okay, and so I'm going to be susceptible to abuse as well. So I'm going to walk into a relationship where my husband abuses me. You know, I'm going to be abused at work. My boss is going to abuse me. I'm going to be deceived.
Cycles repeating themselves.
That's it. Because I'm not a whole. I have all these negative things, negative frequencies. And so I draw these negative people to me, and I'm going to end up in trouble. All right. And now I want us to look at the brain. And this is very interesting, Chantel. Just want to check our time. Okay, we still got a bit of time. Now, if you look at brain chemistry, as I said to you, I studied science. So this stuff to me is fascinating. I just love it. And there are three things that we need for brain development. And that is, these chemicals is serotonin and dopamine and noradrenaline. And so these three chemicals are there, but they will start to really kick in and mature as the brain matures. They need to mature with my brain. But now what happens is, in trauma, I'm going to explain to you that I get stuck, because now I've got serotonin. Serotonin is the calming, the soothing. I can soothe myself. I can take a soft toy and I can soothe myself, and I don't need my mother to rock me to sleep every time. Only, of course, if I'm upset or whatever, I need that. But I can soothe myself. I can get into bed, be put into bed, get my toy, my soft blankie, whatever it is. That's the serotonin that helps me to soothe and calm myself. The next one is dopamine, and that is the joy. That is the happy, the good space. And then the noradrenaline is when I've been in a negative space. I need, and my adrenaline is pumping because it's now fight or flight. I need the noradrenaline to calm me. So these are the three basic chemicals that we need as we grow up. Now, these chemicals are necessary for logic, for discernment, and for reasoning. But as a child, of course, you can't think logically. Your brain is still developing. So you've got those three chemicals, but they're underdeveloped. They're not fully developed, that where they should be helping me to reason, to think logically, and for discernment. So if I'm being raped and those chemicals are still 5-year-old, I'm going to believe it's my fault because I can't reason. It's not my fault. It's the adult that's doing this to me. And so I take the blame. I'm dirty. I'm naughty. It's my fault. And so that's what happens with arrested development. And so these chemicals are underdeveloped in a child. And as I have healthy bonding, healthy relationships, they develop with me, that by the time I'm 12, the prefrontal cortex is now kicking in and working. Those chemicals are fully developed. I can start to reason. I can start to discern, and I can start to think logically because now I've matured. But now what happens to so many of us is we get stuck. And so if I experience any trauma during the first 12 years of my life, those are critical years. Now, the cult knows this. They have studied the human being better than what we can ever think. And they have seen that if a child suffers trauma in the first 12 years of your life, then you get arrested in development, and they can start messing even with, they can take those parts and then program you. Because up until the age of 7, or they can still, you split and they can program you. But afterwards, now you're starting to mature. And if you've got healthy bonds, they've lost you. So if you have a family that loves you, accepts you, and bonds with you, the cult has got less of a chance to get hold of you. They can't, because that bond is too strong. And so that is the key to healing. But now a child is suffering trauma. And so they are literally arrested in development at those ages because those chemicals are not developed. And the child is then stuck. So the 5 traumas that is the most serious, that is going to get me stuck, is rejection. So I want you to know that these 5 traumas are what the cult focuses on specifically. We were never made to be rejected. So rejection is horrific. And we were made for love and for acceptance. The next point is incest. And that is where I have now, it's somebody in my family that has come to the deepest part of my identity. Your sexuality is the deepest part of your identity. And if there is incest, and we know what the Bible tells us about incest, that you are cursed for 10 generations if there's been incest. And so the cult works on this. The cult makes sure that it's family members, specifically the father, that does the first rape. And so you have the father that is going to cause the incest, and the child will be arrested at whatever they're doing with the child, whether it's sodomy, which is anal rape, or vaginal rape. But the child will be arrested. Then we have the next is molestation. Now, this is where it can be the next door neighbor. It can be, it's now not blood. It's now not family. It can be, the little boy down the road. It can be, it's somebody from outside, but it's still molestation. It can be spying on you, peeping Tom, watching you, whatever, but it's still a form of molestation. And so, this is the third one. And you can just see the first one, rejection, and then we start with sexual. So that's going to arrest you in development. The next one is emotional abuse. And that's all negative frequencies. And so they love to break down a child. And even a parent who is broken and that was raised with shame will discipline their children with shame because that's all they know. And so they release negative frequencies of shame. And do you know, Chantel, that shame is the lowest frequency of the negative frequencies? That's shame. And absolutely. So it's horrific. Shame is horrific. And it's the first thing that happened in the garden when Adam and Eve sinned. They were naked and ashamed. Mm-hmm. So shame entered in the garden, came in there. And so what the cult specializes in is shaming. So they would make them sit in their own poop, in their own urine, all of that stuff, and just say to them, disgusting, look what you look like. You disgust me. And shame, because that is what breaks down your humanity, your worth, your value. Yeah. So they love this emotional abuse. And the last one is physical abuse. And that's being beaten, being hit. You've got marks on your body. But that's number 5. And they're in exactly according to from the worst to the least worst. But these 5, they are serious. And so if you've suffered this as a child, whether you're just a human being growing up with broken parents, or you were in an orphanage, you were in some home, or you didn't have parents, and this stuff came into your life, you are going to be arrested in development, and it's going to affect you as an adult. You are going to act like a child, even although you're an adult. And so the wounds of these traumas cause changes in the brain. Now, this was fascinating to me, that you can actually see the changes in the brain when a child suffers trauma. So can you imagine what an SRA child's brain looks like?
Yeah, absolutely.
I want to show you some pictures, some brain scans, and you can see what it looks like. There's a psychiatrist called Dr. Daniel Amen, and he developed it. So he was like a forerunner in his field. He was mocked by his peers. He was told he's crazy. Just give the guys drugs and they'll be fine. And he said no. So he took punishment. He took blows. He took rejection. He took, being shamed. He took all of that, standing by this because he knew that he got something that's truth. It's a specific type of brain scan. It's called PET, a PET brain scan. And his website is amenclinic.com. And his stuff is translated now into Dutch and German. And so amazing how he's become known in the world. Or brainplace.com. And now I want to show you the brain. And what he found out, what we believed in the old days before we knew this, was that once you've messed up your brain, you can never change your brain. It's messed up. And so, you know, I would not touch weed, for example, you know, as a teenager, because I heard weed kills your brain cells. And I need my brain cells to think, you know, so I didn't want to damage anything, so I wouldn't touch that. And then, so now he comes along and he says, wait, the brain is pliable. It's like plasticine.
Yeah.
And you can actually form pathways around. Let's say you had a brain clot in the brain, you know, a thrombosis or in the brain, a brain attack, which they call it. Like you have a heart attack, but now you have a brain attack. Your brain can actually form pathways around the damage and rewire the brain. You can rewire the brain. It is possible. Amazing. And that's where your OTs, occupational therapists, come in, and they are trained to help you with exercises to form new pathways and to reprogram the brain, change your brain.
That's amazing.
All right. So on the left, you can see there's an image of a brain that looks like it's got holes in it. And on the right, you've got quite a smooth brain. So the smooth brain is the healthy brain, but the one with the holes in it isn't holes. It's areas where there's no blood flow. So that's what the scan shows you. Where the holes are, there's no blood flow, so there's no function. So the brain's not working there. And so you need to get the brain going again with specific exercises. Now, this is interesting. On the left, we've got the healthy brain, the smooth brain. And on the right, you've got somebody who's been using meth and heroin 7 years. Can you see the amount of holes in the brain, which means
that's
no
insane.
No blood flow. So these people, if they want to reverse what's happened, they can go and get a job. And all they can do basically is pick up the phone and say, hello, you know, and take a very basic message and goodbye. There's not enough brain function. And so you start training them in little tasks, teaching them, brush your teeth, you know, comb your hair, take a shower, you know, all of these things that, you know, drug addicts don't do. And so you start to retrain the brain and get the blood flowing back so that the brain can heal.
That's
and
amazing.
This is what Dr. Amen got right to show. We can change the brain. You can get your brain back. So this is, to me, this is fascinating. So
it's fascinating.
This follows on. So you've got your 7 years of meth. Still, look what it looks like. Now, this is where they've given her methadone and, you know, certain medications. So Dr. Amen, being a doctor, gives meds as well. He prays with them. And only 6 weeks later, he does another brain scan. And look at the brain. He's changed.
Wow.
They're functioning again.
That's amazing.
And so this is awesome. So it gives people
body's
hope.
designed to heal itself. That's just proving again your body's designed to heal itself.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's, you know, it's so powerful. All right. And then we've got, this is interesting because, you know, my dad was an alcoholic, and when he would drink, he would be violent. And there was stages, you know, my childhood that he would pull out a gun. Now, he had these big hunting guns, and like you know, you'd have to load the bullet. And I mean, you know, he would frighten us, cause tremendous fear. My mom would just run, and, you know, we were 5 children, And I was number 4. And I remember going into the room where my dad was sitting with a gun on his lap. And we lived on a coast, the south coast region of Natal, which is warm. The water is warm. The climate is warm. And so there's a lot of perspiring, So my dad would sit there just in his pants, he'd not have a shirt on. It's hot. And he'd be sitting with a gun. He's as blown out of his mind with alcohol as can be. And he's trying to load the bullet because he's going to shoot us now. And I remember the smell of his body. I remember the sweat and alcohol. And I remember the fear. My heart was just going crazy. My knees were shaking. And I remember going to him and begging him and saying, Daddy, please don't kill us. Please don't shoot us. Please don't shoot us. And I wondered what my brain looked like. Now, this is a picture of a child growing up in a home with violence. So on the left is the normal brain, quite smooth. On the right, the violent one. And yeah, I realized, wow, I've got some brain damage and I need some help. So I started praying. And I know that Roly has just been the most amazing healing balm in my life. His love, his support, his understanding, his stability. He's like a rock. His yes is his yes. He's just such an amazing guy. And through his love, he healed a lot of my damage that I got as a child. And so, yeah, it's possible. Doesn't matter what you've grown up with. So your SRA DIDs this is their life, so you can imagine how broken their brains are. And then a depressed person and a non-depressed person. Look at the non-depressed person, how much light they have. Good frequencies of light. Look at the depressed person. There's very little light. They don't even want to open the curtains in the morning. They don't want to get up. They don't want to get dressed. They don't have the inner strength or the ability. And you can't say to them, come on, man, get out of bed and pull yourself together and, you better pray more. You don't have enough faith. You can't work with them like that. That is being abusive. So you have to know, how do we get more light? I've got to deal with the darkness. I've got to deal with the depression, the trapped emotions that's with this person must be released. I've got to deal with the memories. So you can imagine so many SRAs sit with depression. They don't want to die. A lot of them are suicidal now during this season. So you need to, that's why I'm saying as a counselor, you need to be available and you need to get them to write a petition. I've got petitions for suicide that they make a covenant with God, that they will not harm the body. So that at least there's some document that's going to stop them. And then you ask some part of them to come forward and phone you if they want to harm the body. So you make an agreement with them. And it's very important to work with the survivor that is so broken and so hurt. But remember, there's also brain damage. There's physical brain damage that has taken place. And now we want to get to joy. Joy is our strength. That's what God says. The joy of the Lord is our strength. And we've got to build a joy base. And if you've come through this and your brain is messed up, there's no way for joy. And so the healing, I just want to give some hope so that there is a way of healing. There is a way to get positive frequencies, to start building on love and acceptance and specifically joy. So Psalm 16:11 says, you will show me the path of life. In your presence is fullness of joy. And that's what we want, is the presence of the Lord. And at your right hand, there are pleasures forevermore. And so, to know that I can deal with whatever happened to me in the past. It's not too late. It's never too late with God. He's always wanting to heal. He's always wanting to release his joy to us. And so take scriptures of joy and start printing them out and putting them behind your toilet door. I say, Don't sit there doing nothing. Get your mind working and start going through, whatever it is you're struggling with. Start speaking life. Start speaking, I am enough. I am enough. Why? Because he gives me everything I need. I am enough. That is such a positive frequency. And I had an appointment with Dr. Jessie Czebotar. And the first thing she teaches her people is the statement, I am enough. So Absolutely. It's brilliant. Yeah, she's such a star. I'll still share with you. All right. So my joyful identity, if I had a family life full of joy, my joy bucket, which is my emotional bucket, will be big. And I can, I have lots and lots of joy. And so we understood this when our little grandchildren came along. And so our eldest granddaughter, she is absolutely an example of somebody with a huge joy bucket. She'll come into a room, even when she was small, like a little 2-3-year-old coming to a party. She loves parties. She's a very social being. So she'll come into the room where the other children are playing and they're getting ready, the party, the kids are arriving, and she will arrive and she will say, hello, everybody, I'm here. She's got no problem with her self-confidence. She has a huge joy bucket, but her granny, yours truly, had a little joy bucket. so I never understood why I never played with my birthday gifts. I never opened them. I would get my present, I would peep and see what it is and close it. And for years it puzzled me. And I said, God, come on, why did I do that? When I left home, my mom, with all 5 children, she made boxes and each one got their stuff, in the box. And so when I got my box, it was full of my old birthday presents that I got when I was 5, 6, 7, 8. Here's my birthday presents, unopened, beautiful, not played with. And I asked God, why? And then he started to show me my joy bucket was so small that I was so afraid if I have the joy to get a present, I open it, but when I use it, it's gone. It's finished. So my joy bucket was too small to handle, and I could only handle a little bit at a time. Isn't that sad? You don't realize how it affects you in your life. And you do things as a child and you have these little habits and you just don't know why, but it's got to do with the joy. And so is your home base is a joy. And here we are. This is very interesting to see that the green line is growth. All right. So you're growing now up in years. The blue line is joy. And what you see here is that this is now climbing Joy Mountain. All right. And what you see is that as I grow in years, so my joy bucket should grow with me. And by the time I'm adult, my joy bucket should be big because I need lots of joy to handle this messed up world. I need joy. I need to overflow with joy onto other people's lives. But now I want to show you another picture. And this is what is trauma. And so, first of all, if you just see that this whole climbing of joy, if your growth, physical growing of the body, and your joy bucket is growing together, you've got a dopamine party without saying a word. You've just got full of joy. Everything is just full of joy. But now I want you to see what is trauma. And that is you are growing in years, but your joy bucket is blue and it's staying small. Can you see the difference between growing in age and your size of your joy bucket? That's trauma. People ask, what is trauma? Can you explain to me what is trauma? This is what it is. it's got to do with the joy bucket. And so as I grow and my joy bucket stays stuck, it doesn't grow further. I've got a little joy bucket. The difference between growing in years, adulthood, and the size of my joy bucket, the difference is trauma. And life is painful. So my joy bucket is just not there. I'm depressed. I'm negative. I'm moaning and groaning all the time. When people come around me, they just feel this heaviness. And so this is such a good description of what is trauma. Can you imagine how small? I don't even know if the SRAs have got a joy bucket. I think there's like nothing. What joy have they ever had in their lives? So even, depending on how you grew up and how messed up your parents were. So this is so interesting. And I want to wrap up. If there's no joy capacity, we will also be susceptible to addictive behaviors. So I'm going to try and pull stuff into this emptiness inside of me because I want joy. So I have addictive heart energy, and I'm going to draw all sorts of things into my heart to fill up that space. So depending on which stage of development we got stuck, that's why I said stages of development are so, so important. And then what do we see here? I start pulling into my empty joy bucket all sorts of things, behaviors. I can become a workaholic. I can be jumping. I've got to seek the next thrill after the next thrill, adrenaline rush, adrenaline junkie. Experiences like sex. I can jump from one bed to the next bed and think, okay, that's going to fulfill me. It's addictive. It's addictive. I've got an addictive heart energy and I'm pulling in anything. I can pull people into that place where people feel smothered because you are absorbing everything of that person and they just going like, hey, wait. You can't, and that's where people don't want to be near you because you are sucking out the very life essence out of them. And then also substances like alcohol or whatever your taste of addiction is, your substance. So you can just see that's what happens when our joy buckets are so small. We try and fill and get joy in other ways. All right. And so the addictive heart energy, addictions help us to medicate, to artificially regulate positive and negative emotions as well as pain. And so I try anything just to feel better. And attachments to these different experiences and behaviors and people and substances. I mean, this girl's eating ice cream. I mean, she can finish the bucket, the tub of ice cream. And so this is going to take the place of secure relationships to God and significant others. And so the wounds of the enemy become our prison bars. And we then reinforce these bars by holding on to pain and unforgiveness. And so we are in bondage. And that's my story for today. So I trust that has blessed you.
Thank you so much. As always, extremely interesting. Very, very interesting. So true. And again, I think it's, again, for all of us, I don't think we are aware how many people that have been damaged walk amongst us. So just to be aware, yeah, I think absolutely. That is such important information for each and every one of us to understand. Amanda, thank you so, so much for your beautiful energy and your expertise. And we will see you back in a couple of weeks' time again. No doubt about sure. That. Yeah. And then we talk about the SRA as well. So yeah, I'm not sure if there's anything just in closing. Shame, I know that your time is precious. Anything in closing you'd just like to say to us?
I think, Chantal, if we can start to see people differently, it's exactly what you said. People are around us and we tend to judge them very quickly. We tend to pick up stones and throw stones.
Yeah.
But to realize, where do they come from? What sort of a childhood did they have? How big is their joy bucket? What damage do they have to their brain physically? And
exactly.
If you just think how people are hurt, and that we would have more mercy and compassion and understanding for each other, and be a healing balm, and not someone that just judges and wants to condemn. That's really my heart and my message. And to realize that working with the broken is working with those that are the closest to God's heart.
Exactly.
And that we need to tread softly. And sometimes, of course, we've got to be firm, and there's discipline and all of that stuff. But love is the most important healing balm.
Absolutely. That intention.
Yeah. And also just to remind everyone that this is a difficult time. There's a lot of dark days coming up now. And so the people that are really hurting are going to feel suicidal. And I want to encourage you, please download the petition against suicide, because it's connected with high days, it's connected with birthdays, it's connected. So they do become suicidal now, because remember, their brain has been very badly damaged, and it's all depression, it's all dark. And now they're being pulled into rituals, and there's sacrifices taking place. So there's blood, there's all these sex and all these dark things happening. And so, we really need to step up. And if there are intercessors, people that pray, that would be able to pray over this time, even if you're not counseling these broken people, but you can be a backup, that would also help. So, we need more people in this field. Yeah, for sure.
Just the understanding, Absolutely. That goes along with it, I think, is super important.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. That's really, again, invaluable information for us to know. Really, really appreciate that. And to our viewers out there, I think this is it just gives us so much insight into the world, really, right now. So just to be cool and kind and compassionate, we never know what someone else's story is.
That's right.
So guys and girls, I thank you so much for watching another wonderful, extremely interesting episode with Amanda Bass. Look forward to seeing you back in a couple of weeks. And if you guys haven't already, please give us a like, a share, and a subscribe. Find us on Facebook, BitChute, Twitter, Telegram, and Odyssey. Our new channel as well, Solutions with Aquarius Rising Africa. You can find us on there. Got lots of things going on at the moment, so God bless you all. Take good care of yourselves, and we'll see you.
If this broke something open, if you recognized yourself in the testimony, if your body responded before your mind understood, the next step isn't more information. It's pattern work. Decode what your nervous system built to survive. Dismantle the story that keeps it running. Reorganize through the body and choose from the person you're becoming, not from the pattern that formed when you were too small to choose. That's Solutions. Link below. The body is the record. Let's listen.